St. Kateri is affectionately known as the Lily of the Mohawks. It's interesting that when she was 4 years old, the smallpox epidemic swept through her village in New York in 1656, sadly killing her entire family. The disease left her partially blind, disfigured, and partially crippled. As an orphan, she was not always treated well. She longed for the faith of her mother and recalled the prayers she was taught. At age 20, she was secretly baptized by Jesuit missionaries. She was bullied and ostracized by people in the village where she lived, and it became so dangerous for her that she fled for refuge, trekking some 200 miles in rough terrain to Montreal in Canada. Once safe at the French Jesuit mission, she again refused to marry and offered her suffering and her life to Christ. Her great sanctity, virtue, mystical prayer life, and love for Jesus amazed the Jesuit priests and everyone who knew her. It is said that people loved to be around her and to listen to her speak because her soul radiated the beauty and peace of God. Kateri died of an illness in 1680 during Holy Week when she was just 24 years old.
Catholic Movement Oceania, in collaboration with you and the Archdiocese of Canberra-Goulburn, warmly welcomes everyone to this online celebration of Querida Amazonia in Oceania. It is important for us to receive the global message of Querida Amazonia and to come to understand its application for our region. Beloved Amazon provides great insight and wisdom in the vision of creation, cultures, and church, which we hope to learn from for the journey ahead in Oceania.
We've planned this event to begin unpacking Querida Amazonia, or Beloved Amazon, through prayer, listening, reflection, and dialogue. We're delighted to have some special guests with us today, who we'd now like to briefly welcome.
So firstly, we would like to welcome Archbishop Peter Lloyd Chung of Archdiocese of Suva and President of the Federation of Catholic Bishops Conference, and also Archbishop Christopher Prowse of the Archdiocese of Canberra-Goulburn, who will lead us later in the opening prayer. Welcome, Archbishop Chung and Archbishop Christopher.
Thank you.
We'd also like to welcome Cardinal John Ribat from Port Moresby in Papua New Guinea, who'll be providing us with some input about his experience attending the Synod on the Amazon. Welcome, Cardinal John.
So the purpose of this gathering is and dialogue in response to the signs of the times evidenced by the multiple crises we face today and the call to action through ecological conversion and integral ecology in Laudato Si.
As we begin, I'd now like to invite Glenn Lockery, Wiradjuri man and Anglican priest from St Oswald's Parish in Melbourne, to acknowledge the lands and the peoples where we're gathering today for this Oceania event. Over to you, Glenn.
Thank you, Jackie. Darrell Lavinia, Badu, Wiradjuri, Yawa Nadu, Glenn Lockery. I'm proud to be Wiradjuri and my name is Glenn. It is important on these occasions that we come mindful of where we sit, on whose lands we gather, and whose lands we represent across Oceania and across the world. It is vital that we recognize and acknowledge the sovereignty of those lands that give us life, that maintain our life, and that provide us with hope for the future. We acknowledge each and every elder present here today from these lands. We honour and respect the elders of the past who paved the way for us, who learnt and taught and lived knowledge and wisdom and share that with us. And we acknowledge the elders of today, and we recognise, encourage and look forward to the emerging elders of the future, those who will lead us even further into our understanding of our relationship with our Mother Earth, with our brothers and sisters, our kin of all creatures. And we acknowledge this land, this day, and we give thanks to the sovereign God for the privilege of being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Glenn, for that very warm acknowledgement of where we are and who we're with and the spirit that's calling us to this work. I'd now like to invite Archbishop Christopher Prowse, who's on Ngunnawal country, to lead us in our opening prayer today. Thank you, Archbishop Christopher. Over to you. I think you might be on mute.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. And we pray the prayer from the church in Oceania almost 20 years ago, adapted from Ecclesia in Oceania by St. John Paul II. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. O Mary, Queen of all creation, in our need we turn to you. With eyes of love, with empty hands and longing hearts, we look to you that you may see your Son, our Lord. We lift our hands that we may have the bread of life. We open wide our hearts to receive the Prince of Peace, Queen of all creation. Your sons and daughters, thank you for your trusting word that goes through the ages, rising from an empty soul made full of grace, prepared by God to welcome the word to the world, that the world itself might be reborn. In you, the reign of God has dawned, the reign of grace and peace, love and justice. Word made flesh. The church throughout the world joins you in praising him whose mercy is from age to age. O Stella Maris, light of every ocean and mistress of the deep, guide the peoples of Oceania across all dark and stormy seas, that they may teach and reach the haven of peace and light prepared in him who calmed the sea. Keep all your children safe from harm, for the waves are high and we are far from home. As we set forth upon the oceans of the world and show the deserts of our time, show us, O Mary, the fruit of your womb, for without your Son we are lost. Pray that we may never fail on life's journey, that in heart and mind and word and deed, in days of turmoil and in days of calm, we will always look to Christ and say, who is this who even wind and sea obey him? Queen of all creation, in whom all storms grow still, pray at the dawn of Laudato Si anniversary year that the Church in Oceania will not cease to show forth the glorious face of your Son Jesus, full of grace and truth, so that God will reign in the hearts of the Pacific peoples and they will find peace in the world's true Saviour. Plead for the heart of Oceania that she may have strength to follow faithfully the way of Jesus Christ, to tell courageously the truth of Jesus Christ, and to live joyfully the life of Jesus Christ. O help of Christians, protect us. Queen of all creation, guide us. Our Lady of Peace, pray for us. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Archbishop Christopher. Before we invite Cardinal Ribat to speak with us, we'd like to share with you a short film that was made on the Synod of the Amazon from a group called Ribat. and it's the Red Ecclesial Pan-Amazonic Network. This will help to further contextualise our time together. Thanks, Cheryl. Just going to try that again as the sound doesn't seem to be working. I can see at the bottom there that the volume's just not clicked off. Just there, that's it. Thank you.
El 20% del agua dulce.
This is the source of 20% of the planet's unfrozen fresh water. Here we have 5 bottles of water. If I take away one of them, someone is going to be left without drinking water. We have to ask ourselves what that water will be used for, because it's vital for many people.
Almost 40 million people live in the region, out of which about 3 million are indigenous.
The Amazon River, which runs more than 4,300 miles, is not just something on a map or something geographical. It's the home of roughly 3 million indigenous people from different tribes and origins.
Conhecemos que a Amazônia há riquezas não somente em recursos vegetais, não somente recursos naturais, e sim em conhecimento, cultura, línguas diversas, que nós possuímos conhecimento. Somos impactados em atividades extrativismo.
Sorry.
Almost 40 million people.
It's the home of roughly 3 million indigenous people from different tribes and origins.
Conhecemos que a Amazônia há riquezas não somente em recursos vegetais, não somente recursos naturais, e sim em conhecimento, cultura, línguas diversas, que nós possuímos conhecimento. Somos impactados em atividades extrativismo que tem a ver exploração ilegal nas terras indígenas, petróleos, agronegócios, avançando mais ainda.
Thank you, Cheryl. And I'm sorry that we had some technical challenges there where when we made it full screen, the sound would just go to mute. So it was much smaller print than we hoped there. Apologies. So we'd now like to introduce Cardinal John Ribat. And Cardinal John, thank you for joining us. I just want to give a brief introduction and then hand over to you to share something of your experience being at the Synod on the Amazon. So just to mention briefly that John Ribat joined the congregation of the Sacred Heart Missionaries in 1985, and he was appointed as the auxiliary bishop of Barina in Papua New Guinea in 2000 and became the Bishop of Barina in 2002. In 2007, he was made coadjutor of the Bishop of Port Moresby, and in 2008, he became the Archbishop of Port Moresby when the Archbishop Brian Barnes retired. In 2016, Cardinal John Ribat was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II, and for many years he served as the president of the Catholic Bishops' Conferences of Oceania. So we welcome you, Cardinal John Ribat, to speak with us today about your time with the Synod, and share a little bit with us about what you experienced there and what you learned, and perhaps what those learnings mean for us together in Oceania going forward. So over to you, Cardinal John. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Jenny, for the invitation in order to be here to actually share my experiences of attending the Synod, also what I learned at the Synod. First of all, at the Synod itself, I was pleased to see the local people of the Amazon. I mean, you see them in the articles and in like that. But this time I spoke to them, and I really saw the faces, the expression of their faces of what they are going through. And for me, that was a great thing. And I was seeing not only themselves, but also those from the areas from around the world that we were invited to be part of the Synod. And at least we shared some of the experiences that they have. And so for me, that was a great experience for me. And it made me realize that what they were going through, it was not only themselves. They have their own situation that they went through, but also in our time, also here in Papua New Guinea, we are going through this, but in a special way. So that's what I learned about the situation there. So while listening to them, while hearing what they were sharing, it made me realize that yes, your situation is so much very, and it demands a lot of attention, demands understanding, and really invites us to be part of them at that moment. But also making me aware, realizing what we are going through also here. So in my sharing, I was saying that while we may be 100 or thousands of kilometers away, apart, but the experience that we are going through is the same, but in different situation. For us, what I learned here, the situation for us here, is that it's about the land also, and about the sea, two things, land and sea. So with the land here, we're going through a situation where many people are coming now, and also population is increasing, but actually from people also from within and from outside also, companies coming. There's a term we use for when they want to get land. It is actually land grabbing. It's happening there also, and here also is the same. And this is from both sides, from ourselves and from companies. And so people from outside, individuals also from outside. And so this situation, at the end, it causes people to be unhappy, but also at the same time, it makes them really suffer in the sense that they are going through situations where they find themselves that their land is taken away from them, or before they really know that their land is taken away from them, they are surprised. And at the end, they cannot complain because the law protects again how they acquire the acquisition of the land, at the same time how the license, the title is given to them, granted to them. And so these are the things that kind of, because people from the village, they do not know what are the processes and so on. They thought that, and when they talk to them, they thought that, it's okay, we will give you this and so on. At the end, they don't realize that they are giving away their whole life. That's the situation we are in here now. And so that's the problem that we have here. At the same time also with human trafficking. Now we have these logging companies here. and also they get people from other provinces telling them that, come, we will give you a good job here. And they go, and especially girls and so on. So they go. At the end, they found themselves in a very, very different situation. They are used and so on like that. And so that is difficult. You know, they are going through situations where at the end they found that they were kind of not told the truth about what they will do. At the end, they're surprised that they become to be used, to be paid, and to be used for their whatever they will offer to those people who are paying. So these are situations also we are going through here, but maybe not in a big scale, but there are signs of it happening here. That's the situation with us here now. Also, there are many other things like this, and also another thing about the seabed mining. You know, our situation here about the seabed mining, the sad part of it, or the part that kind of made it difficult for us to understand, there was not enough awareness by the company about the negative impact that this mining will cause us. But at this time, the mining has been shelved. But the tricky part of it is that the license is still alive. That can be sold to anybody. So it has not expired, but it's still alive. So while the company has shelved their program of mining, we are fearing that they could sell this to another company. And that we are vigilant, we are very watchful about it, because the situation really is this. They are talking about mining and saying that they will just scrape the surface of the reefs, or what the stone in the reef. And when they say deep sea mining, it's not really in the ocean. No, in the places where our people are going fishing. So it's really not really far away from the places where we go fishing. It's really our place of fishing and so on, where our livelihood is. So this is really the really kind of sad part that will affect us. And another thing is this. No, it is going to be, it was going to be in Kevieng, New Ireland province, and Rabaul. So it's between the two provinces. And another thing that we were worrying about is that with the tuna industry, the tuna fish, we have also here, there is a breeding ground for tuna fish. And we are not told, because there were no studies carried out and so on. Awareness, not enough awareness was carried out. And they did not tell us that with this mining that will happen there, how will it affect the breeding ground for the tuna, and also the other marine lives, because there was no study done. And I was asking some of the fisheries, those who work in the fisheries department, from the place where this mine should have been happening. And I asked them, what are you doing? Have you done enough awareness? Are you doing some studies and so on? And say, no, we're not doing it. So that was really kind of a very sad part of it. And it was that was really kind of very tricky and not really good. But then, you know, the thing is that the Miserio, and there was an organization that came together, also people from Australia, Germany, and so on. They came together in New Zealand. They came together and brought us together to be able to be the voice, so voice against this project. And that's what we formed in different parts of Papua New Guinea, in Madang, in Kevieng, in Rabaul, and also here in the National Capital District with the churches also. we combine to be able to be the voice against this. So, and also people from the Pacific, from Fiji, from Tonga, and from these places where we have been having meeting with them. And so at that time, our voice was that we passed a resolution that there should be no seabed mining in the whole of the Pacific. That was our stand. And at that time, we really make this known to at that meeting, when we were meeting in Fiji, the first time we had this meeting. And that was a slogan also that was carried out by different mining people also at this time. But I like also to add here that with this, while we were worrying about all this, now the climate change, high-rise sea level, is really affecting most of the islands now. While we see that in Papua New Guinea, we have this island, Carteret Island, has been broken up into 3 parts. Before it was only 1 island. Now it is in 3 parts now. So it's really very drastic and very challenging in the sense that those on the islands, they will continue, they will face a very challenging future with water, food. They will have not enough land to grow their food and so on. Water, no place for water anymore because water will be just going over. And on Carteret Island, people have moved out from there. The Bishop of Bougainville has given a piece of land. Now he died last year. He gave a piece of land to resettle the people there from Carteret Island. The thing is this: some from the island are going there, but the old ones, they are saying that no, we grew up here, we grew up in this island, we will stay here. Whatever happens, we like to go with the island. So that's also the kind of a challenge that they are facing also. So it's really very hard and difficult for those really on the islands that are affected like this. They are really kind of surrounded by sea. And what I'm talking about PNG. I'm with the situation in Fiji and all the other islands also is the same. I think Archbishop Peter will be able to say something along that line. But Papua New Guinea, this is what I can say. And islands, small islands also are disappearing. For example, in Manus, I went to Manus in 2018. I went there after Easter, and I visited an island. 2 islands I visited, and they were saying, you know, NGO groups went to help them to build seawall to try to protect their island, because they were saying that, and they were showing us that the islands were decreasing, and even the sea now, the water now, the swell were kind of sweeping over the island now, and there were about 700 families on this island here, and that was so we asked them, where are you going after this? And then they said, oh, we are looking forward to our families if they can accept us on another island. So that's the situation that we are in at this time. So at this time, I think what I'm thinking of at this time, as the Amazon situation calls us to come together and see, I was already thinking, what can we do about our situation also, not only in Papua New Guinea, but in the Pacific and especially the islands. This is where most of the people are on also at this time. So maybe we could have the same approach as we did for the Amazon, that we could have a kind of a synod to be able to look into our situation here and see how can we best address our situations and be able to get our people together to know how we can be together to be able to come up with a situation that will help all of us this time. And so this is what I'm seeing, and I can see as our response to our situation, seeing what is affecting us, and this is what I'm thinking, and maybe with the whole Pacific, we'll come to a kind of an agreement and kind of discuss this further and find out or see how can we better address and voice our concern about our situation and how we could, you know, be helped to be able to address our situation here. So the Synod of the Amazonia helps me also to look at how we could look at our situation here in Papua New Guinea and the whole Pacific. The logging industry is another situation also that is really kind of affecting us. I think the Solomons also and ourselves in PNG. The logging has been here for many years. It's really one of the big company here, Ribunan Haijau, is actually would be connected to China also, this company here. So this will be a kind of a situation that we need to look into. And usually when people, when they, what's the name, company come in and ask for the use of their land, they come with agreement to sign and so on, kind of contract. And at the end, what the situation always is that they just come, give it to the people and sign. No explanation, nothing. At the end, when they find out that they are really the losers at the end, then fellows are crying out now what they cry for about what they have signed and so on. And at one point, the mothers, when they found out that even their sons also, they could, the small ones in the village, their names were also put in there, that they are the ones also who agreed to this contract here. It was really a sad case. And the mothers could not stop except to continue to be the voice and the cry of the community that they were affected. And at the end, the government has to kind of respond and send in fellows to really help them out in this situation where they did not know what they were signing and so on. And at the end, they found out that they were the losers at the end. They did not own the land anymore. It was so hard for them. They now realize that where will we go in the future? What is our future like now? So this is the situation that, and luckily at this time, Archbishop of Rabaul, Archbishop Francisco Panfilo, is a Salesian priest, but also Archbishop now Rabaul is from Italy, and he has helped very much, and it has cost him a lot of difficulties, but he has not given up until now. He's still working to be able to help out the people because he heard their cry, and so what is where is the church now in this case here? And he just come in and really, so he himself is continue to make us aware of the situations where we are in at this time, and I'm only voicing the situations that I am aware of and I'm very clear about. But situations that it's out of my reach and I do not know, I don't share it with you here. So this is where I am with our situations here in Papua New Guinea. And of course, all the time when I speak about climate change and high rise sea level, I always mention the whole Pacific. And so for this, thank you for listening. This is the moment that I want to share with you what is our situation here and for the Pacific also. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cardinal John. It is so special to have you with us today to hear your witness, your experience of the Synod, but also what you're living through as a Cardinal in our world of church and in Papua New Guinea, the vulnerability of people, the vulnerability of ecosystems that you're a witness to, and the cry that you're hearing that we're all called to respond to. So we really appreciate you sharing those stories with us. Go ahead.
There's a sharing of that island where they were, I'm saying Andhra Island on Manus, they were building the seawall, and then the people asked the NGO group, they meant well to help them. So they asked them, what do we need to build the seawall? And they said, go. First of all, they said, we need stones and, okay, we have cement here, sand here, but stones. And then the NGO group says, no problem, go to the reef, break the reef down, break the rocks from the reef and bring them here. They did. And at the end, when the people were doing that, breaking the reef and bringing, and they were started to build, when they were going back to fish, no more fish there. And the island were, this is the island, and that's the kind of a garden where they would go and get their food. At the end, they found that the fish were gone. And then the group broke into two groups. So one was to support the project to continue, and the other one said, no, I think we know that we have created another problem for us. And that also gave me the reason to be able to use this to see the work of the seabed mining. No, they come and they were saying that they will just scrape the top, but scraping the top already off the reef is really destroying the ground where the fish are feeding, where the fish are living. And that is also, the scraping itself is already enough to destroy the places for the marine life.
Yeah.
And that is really, and if there was no study and so on, I could see already from the experience of the people themselves sharing with me the devastation that will happen. The scraping is already enough to destroy people's state, but the reefs. But also at the same time, I was kind of referring also to the mining on the land. You are able to send there the supervisors and all. They will stand there and supervise the work on the land, and with heavy machines and so on. In the sea, no one will be there. And without the big heavy machines that were coming to do the job, no one will supervise them, no one will be there. And they're saying that the scraping is not scraping, it's really demolishing and really destroying the whole reef.
Yeah.
And that was, for me, it was already an eye-opener. And that's what I was saying. The machine that came, it was heavy machinery. It was heavy machinery to be able to do to make sure that the machines are stable in the sea, heavy enough to really kind of do the work that they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so for me, when I saw that, it was really kind of very devastating and very discouraging, actually. And the government was not responsible. No one is responsible. The company could just pick kind of leave anytime because they are not on land. They are at sea. And all what they would use to work on the sea is the big boat and so on the sea. And they can leave at any moment. Now, the people also, they will lose all that. And for the people who rely on the sea for their livelihood, at the end, they will lose everything. So that was the situation that I'd like to share a little more. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, the understanding of the nurseries, the sacredness of these places, and the process of denuding them, damaging them. And as you say, they're so voiceless, they're so vulnerable. Who's watching? You know, we know our God is watching. We know that there's a presence of creation that's present, but for humanity to turn our back on these things is clearly a crime. And that's what Pope Francis talks about in Querida, Amazonia, doesn't he? About how these acts, these decisions, and then the actions are actually crimes. So our understanding of this is heightened through your witness, through your story telling with us today, and we really appreciate that. I was wondering if I might share a couple of slides from our time together in Rome, just to connect around some of that context of being there and the message in Querida, Amazonia. Is that okay with you, Cardinal John, if I share the screen now and just show a little bit here. It's just a bit slow, my internet connection, but you can probably see one of the things that brought us together, of course, were the side events that were happening when we were there for the Synod on the Amazon at the weekends. And the second week, of course, was focused on integral ecology. And I understand that all the participants at the Synod, lay people, religious, men and women, were invited to share in 15 minutes story of whatever you wanted to say. So it was very open. The goals of Querida Amazonia, or Beloved Amazon, are quite distinct. So really, it's the first time that Laudato Si was applied to any region of the world. So it's very groundbreaking in that application. And it provides us all with a framework for the reflection, the dialogue, and the discernment. that then took place. So the purpose was to, with Querida Amazonia, officially present a final document that really enables everyone to read and reflect and discern going forward. And of course, there are common issues and concerns, as you were saying, Cardinal Ribat, across not only the Amazonian region, but for us in Oceania, understanding that oxygen is produced, obviously, as the great lungs of the planet are the forests, but also in our oceans. So there's a real mirroring there that we need to pay attention to. And the apostolic exhortation also provided recommendations, but it actually is the beginning of a process for further dialogue and action for us all. And interestingly, there were not a lot of statistics in this document. The qualitative and quantitative data wasn't the strong point. It was really about connecting through poetry, through story, and sharing a narrative about this place, this beautiful place of the Amazon, for us all to reflect on. So I think it's really clear that it's, you know, the greatest biodiverse hotspot in the world. But when we look at our oceans collectively, they are incredibly biodiverse, particularly those reef ecosystems you were mentioning, Cardinal Ribat. A couple of other things to share is that Pope Francis in this document is inviting us to share in 4 dreams that he has. And the dreams relate, of course, to the social circumstances of people and the need for those stories to be heard, for Indigenous or First Nations people's dignity to be upheld. He, of course, talks about the cultural riches and the dream for cultures, the diversity of cultures to continue to grow in strength and shine. And also he speaks about the dream of ecosystems, or the ecological dream. And lastly, his 4th dream that he shares with us and invites us to further as well is the dream of the church having new faces and being guided by those cultural riches, the ecological riches and the social riches, so that the church more fully lives in a way that is integrated with the earth. So just mentioning those dreams, and some of these images come from some of the events that were happening, like the Way of the Cross, through the streets in Rome all the way up to St. Peter's Square. And so there's a summary of the social dream here in calling for a worldview that integrates and holds all of those riches in the Amazon, and the need for us to never ignore and to always hold up the voice of the vulnerable and the poor as being a starting point, but actually as being the way in which this needs to be led going forward. I mentioned the cultural dream there, the significance to identify with all of the cultures and not see them ever as a homogenous culture, to recognise particular languages and places and that distinctness of the ways in which God's creation and God's people are living, so that this richness is what informs us wherever we are in terms of how we respond, our way of life, and the kinds of education and formation and processes are connected with the cultures of people in particular places. And of course, the ecological dream is quite specific to the species of the forest and the incredible diversity there, and the need for the the mining and the industry, the heavy industry that's coming in, to actually be managed in a very different way, to not look at individual cases as being single, and looking at the whole region. And of course, it was also about encouraging the biodiversity in the ecosystems and the people in the Congo and Borneo and other really rich forested areas to contribute to this story. And the dream for the church, the 4th dream that he invites us to share in, is understanding the depth of spirituality and the gospel message, the Querida, to come through for us, to be upheld and to be shared and to be understood. but also to see it as an ongoing evolutionary and emergent story of church, where it's grounded and rooted just like a tree in terms of the gospel and in terms of the parables and the story of Christ, but actually that there's an open awareness to the Spirit that's always leading us forth into something new, into the church always being ever growing and present. And so it really enabled a time of, you know, dialogue across the whole region in the Amazon, but also around the world. And of course, the images that we saw of the fires in the Amazon, which were mirrored in Australia when we had the bushfires over the summer, the deforestation that's taking place and that's rapidly increasing. And we can see the parallels in different parts of the world. Of course, I just mentioned the fires in Australia and the impact there. And interestingly, the timing of when Querida Amazonia came out was the 20th of February from the Vatican. And the president in Brazil, Bolsonaro, actually criticised Pope Francis in having a go, if you like, at his governance of the Amazon region in Brazil, saying why wasn't Australia called out as well, because of the mismanagement around the wildlife, the huge loss of life we've experienced here in Australia in the bushfires. So the parallels are made at multiple levels by everybody, including the issues around mismanagement and governance. And of course, we know that this has been happening in Australia with the Murray-Darling Basin, these precious rivers, but this is true to the rivers across all areas of life in Oceania that are vulnerable. So the 7 key points that I think are worth looking at before we go into dialogue today, that I think really help illuminate the ways forward for us as well, can be captured in this slide, I think. So the first one is that there's a greater sense of responsibility needed to be taken up by our governance leaders, and an acknowledgement of the contributions made at the grassroots by civil society and also by international organisations that support and advocate for ecosystems and people. The second key pathway that we can illuminate and go forward with, of course, is the integration of Indigenous knowledges together with Western science and the disciplines of every field. So this is that call for an integral ecological perspective and integral faith as we move forward. Thirdly, an acknowledgement of the rights of First Nations people all around the world and the need for the call for principal dialogue partners to be upheld. And we heard about that in Laudato Si, and this came through strongly in this document from Pope Francis. Fourthly, the insistence on having robust legal frameworks in place, understanding that with the technological advancements, we need to see clearly the need to set limits and to put in place the protections that are needed for people and the planet. Fifthly, the need to reject the illusion that things aren't so serious and that we should just get on as if this is all normal and continue with consuming. So the need for us to really take a look with a frank, clear-eyed view that we need to take responsible positions now for an integral worldview going forward with the common good as our guiding light. And the sixth one is to appreciate the beauty of all creation where we are. In Oceania, of course, it is abundant, but it's also suffering. And to see that we need to respect the natural cycles and rhythms. And lastly, the need to strengthen education for everyone, as it's important we see the gift, the vulnerability, and the need to help it flourish going forward. So coming back to you now for some dialogue, I'd like to encourage now, and firstly to thank Cardinal Ribat for what you've shared. I just wanted to share some of those key items in Querida Amazonia so that we can think further about those, that we can read this document again afresh perhaps, and invite us to go into some small breakout room in a moment. But just to reflect, so if we sit quietly, we've got a short film that's prayer-like, to help us to meditate on what we've heard from Cardinal Ribat and from the prayer this morning. And Cheryl, I'll hand over to you for that sharing. Thank you. Just come into a place of stillness to reflect for a moment.
Hubo un tiempo en que el ser humano vivía en contacto y con respeto a la naturaleza. Hoy, todo esto está pisoteado en nombre del beneficio y del progreso. El hombre está destruyendo este planeta y con él nuestro futuro. La devastada Amazonia, los seres vivos que sufren por el fuego, mares contaminados. No entendemos que la naturaleza encontrará un nuevo equilibrio y seguramente será sin nosotros. Esta oración introspectiva y sincera es un grito por el daño devastador que estamos causando a la naturaleza y a nosotros mismos. Pero es al mismo tiempo un llamado de esperanza para que actuemos ahora sin dudarlo.
So it's time now to have some dialogue, and we know from Laudato Si, the first step, the first action we're invited to take is to be in dialogue together, to listen to one another so that we can really tune into a sense of unity in our action going forward. There's lots we can do personally, and we need to keep doing those things. And I invite you to share those in the dialogue too. But we're really at the point where we're wanting to lean in so that we can discern together how we can best protect and look after Oceania, how we may do that as people of faith, people who believe that we are called to do more than what has been happening so far. So Cheryl, we're going to break into small groups, and the questions that we have to guide your dialogue in groups of 4 or 5, so that there's definitely time for each person to speak, to be heard, and to listen to others, and a nice diversity of voices in the group, are these 2 questions. What struck you the most about what you've listened to, what you've seen so far? And the second round of questions, where you're each invited to share, is how might we respond in Oceania? So that's a sense of us doing this together. So perhaps make a note of those. We can pop them in the chat box as well for you. We're going to give you 10 minutes for this dialogue. Start by introducing yourself to the other members of the small group, and then take turns responding to the first question and the second, and we'll bring you back together in 10 minutes' time. Enjoy the dialogue, everyone. How are we going, Cheryl? Just working out the breakout groups. Hang in there, everyone.
How do we do that? Yeah.
You'll see it pop up on the screen, so you shouldn't have to do anything. You may need to click a button to enter the breakout room, so just keep an eye out for that if you need to click on it. Perhaps it wasn't enabling it, so you're just going in to make sure we can break out. Thanks, Cheryl. So again, those questions, what was it that struck you when you were listening to Cardinal Ribat, or the prayers, or anything else that's come up? And secondly, how might we respond? That's a big question, I know. And if this is not going to work for us today, we can certainly have some dialogue at the next session. I just don't want to spend too much time on this. What do you think, Cheryl?
Now I had to assign manually, so I'm doing it.
Oh, thank you.
Just a minute.
Thanks so much. Perhaps while we're waiting, if it's going to be another minute or two, I'm just wondering if I could invite Archbishop Peter Chong, would you be willing to say a few words at this point, if you'd like to, on Querida, Amazonia, or from what you heard Cardinal Ribat talking about, or even in the Fiji context, something you might like to share with us while we're waiting for the technology to catch up with where we're at?
Thanks, Jackie. Yeah, I just want to say that what Cardinal Ribat says is we have a lot of parallel experiences along that line of the impact of companies that exploit our natural resources, whether it's the ocean, the river, gravel from the river, that's something happening here, black sand, and just the power of these companies not to buy out people's mind and take advantage of indigenous communities' lack of knowledge of the consequences of exploiting of mining. So there's definitely a lot of parallels that here, and how when you take out something from the ecosystem and how that impacts the natural ecosystem, but also the human ecosystem itself too, and economic sustenance and food security. So that is definitely something that is definitely happening here in Fiji.
Thank you. I think that's a really important connection, isn't it? The security, the food, the agricultural story that's taking place, the industrialization. And what's really interesting for us with the COVID task force commission that Pope Francis set up is to bring about the shifts and the changes in light of what's not been serving humanity and the planet. Being able to be accelerated into this time of seeing pathways of transformation for our economic, health, security, and ecological protection. So I'd encourage all of us to tune into the messaging that's coming out around that, because it does respond to the issues at our local levels, as you're saying, of, you know, the stress brought about for ecosystems, for people, when we have such a heavy footprint and a technological mindset that's taking over. Cheryl, can I just check in with you and see how our small group
we're ready
planning's
to
going?
go now.
Ready to go?
Yeah.
So sorry to be jumping around a bit, everybody, and thank you, Archbishop Chong, for what you've shared. We'll come back shortly. Just if we could join the breakout room, that would be really terrific. Thank you.
Hello, Dorothy and David. You don't have group, but you could have your own group here now. There was supposed to be a pop-up, and if you click OK, it will take you to your group. I'm not sure if it appeared on your screen. Dorothy, did you see something or the pop-up or no? I could move you to another room.
Look, I'm quite happy not to go into a room. Thank you.
Okay. I could move, yeah. Let's try. Did you get a pop-up?
Yes, but I don't wish to join a group.
Oh, okay. It's okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
You can just wait here.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, sure, sure. Okay, welcome back, everyone. So as people are returning to the main room, may I ask each one of you to please type in the chat box. So please place your name and one insight or particular action that emerged from your small group discussion. Kindly type it in the chat box. And thank you again, everyone, for sharing in the dialogue.
Thanks, Cheryl. And as you're typing in the chat box, I might just invite one person to share from what they heard come through as an action or an insight. And I saw Sally Neves is with us, and I'd mentioned that this may happen. So Sally, would you like to unmute yourself and just share something that came through by way of action that may have emerged?
Sure. Hi, Jackie. Yeah, we.
Hi, thank you.
In our group, we spoke about at first we were we would love to see more action from bishops and leaders, I guess, in responding to this. We'd like to invite Australian bishops especially to show us the actions, even though we've been hearing a lot of fantastic talk as a result of Laudato Si. So that was one thing we spoke about, and we sort of spoke also about some parishes are making efforts with solar panels and so on, which is fantastic. But when we are responding at a more deeper level, it seems to be very urgent at this time.
Thanks, Sally. It really is urgent. We don't have any time to lose, and it is always sobering to look at what the reality is in the world today in terms of ecosystems and vulnerable people, poverty that's increasing. So, you know, this opportunity to gather as people at multiple levels of, you know, we're all leading from wherever we are, but to hear those voices and to work together so that we are able to lift up the voice of First Nations people to learn more about places and what they mean and how to help them flourish has come through on some of the chat box comments I notice as well. I think that's all really important work, and I think we're really struggling to find what are the key actions we need to take together at this point, but we need to go through this sort of messy period of the dialogue, listening to one another, hearing what's emerging, and note these actions that are coming forward from all the different voices, and clarify how to do that. So I want to now, just mindful of time, invite us to move to a focus of action, which is of course coming up for all of us from the 1st of September till the 4th of October. A period of time in which we're invited to act together is the season of creation. So could I ask you, Cheryl, to share with us what's been coming through from Pope Francis around this and what we can do together as ways of action to move. Hopefully our sound is good.
There won't be any technical issues again, but let's try. So yeah, we would like to invite everyone once again to celebrate the Season of Creation 2020 with us. It's from September 1 to October 4, 2020.
Thanks, Cheryl. And there's lots of different actions that can emerge at a local level through our churches, through our communities, that enable this way of being, this integral ecological perspective to be deepened in our communities, to be further acted on. And I think we'll see a whole lot of action emerging this year, because last year was the first time Pope Francis really lent his voice to the season of creation within the Catholic Church world. It's obviously been active for decades ecumenically. And there's also some hope that this will become an interfaith season of creation as well in future years. So building up the momentum around that and recognising that it's through us changing how we're praying, how we're being together, that holds that integral perspective that really enables a whole lot of other things to shift and unlock in the way we're living and in the way we're advocating and campaigning and working together.
Jackie, could you mention the theme of the season this year, please?
Yes, so the theme is it's a Jubilee year. Season of Creation is about a time for us again to renew our sense of being, our purpose as custodians of this planet. And that Jubilee time is actually sitting right within this year of the special anniversary year. And you would have heard, if you were with us or you saw the recording, Father Josh from Querida from the Dicastery for Integral Human Development spoke about the special anniversary year and shared that important announcement made by Pope Francis that at the end of that 12 months, everybody's invited to take up 7-year action plans from the perspective of being families, parishes, schools, universities, businesses, farmers, religious, everybody. So it's a time of Jubilee where we reflect, we discern, and we put in place the kinds of actions needed for whole dioceses, for us in Oceania, to really live Laudato Si in every sense, from a governance perspective, the decisions we're making, knowing supply chain influences on people and planet, to policies, to all of the footprint responses we can make. You were mentioning solar panels, Sally. There's so many different ways in which we affect the soils, the atmosphere, the creatures around us. The change in theology is a radical one, this call for an integral way of seeing and being in the world. And so there's a lot of work to do with prayer, with formation, with understanding our gospel stories from that perspective as well. So tapping into the rich wisdom of people who've been writing books about this. I saw Mary Tinney's on this call today, and her recent book. There's so many other, knowledge and wisdom of Indigenous people, all of those riches that we're invited to explore and understand. So I'd encourage us to look at that Jubilee year with our context of church and parish, but everyone, and to see that there's lots of actions that we can take. So knowing what's the right one for you to do personally, but what is the right action for us to take as community. We're planning to gather as an Oceania group for September, and it will either be on the 1st of September, which is the World Day of Prayer for Creation, or it will be St. Hildegard of Bingen's feast day, which is in the middle of the month. And there'll be another gathering in November. So in between these times, I'd invite you to reflect on Querida, Amazonia, because it has special significance for us in this region, to look at the Synod report that came out at the end of the Rome Synod, which was a 2.5 year process. We'll invite some speakers to speak a little bit more about this so that we can go deeper into this messaging from Pope Francis and Querida, Amazonia, and what it means for us. So we look forward to doing that together. Thank you for joining us today. And it's time now to invite Father Azali Russ to share with us the closing prayer. Father Russ was the parish priest in Alice Springs. He's a Divine Word missionary, and he happens to be the provincial leader for the SVDs for the province of Oceania. So over to you now, Father Russ. Thank you. You may need to unmute yourself as well.
Thank you, Jackie. You don't mind blowing up this thing for me, please?
Can you see the prayer there?
It's a bit small.
Is it possible to make it bigger, Cheryl?
No, unfortunately.
Okay, I'll try.
I'm sorry, Father Russ.
It's okay. So we pray. Loving God,
Creator of heaven and earth.
Please mute yourself if you wouldn't mind muting yourself, unless you're Father Russ at this point. That would be great. Otherwise, there's too many voices. But do say it where you are when you're on mute. Sorry to interrupt. Thanks.
Okay. So creator of heaven and earth and all that is in them, you created us in your own image and made us stewards of all your creation. You blessed us with sun, water, and bountiful land, so that all might be nourished. Open our minds and touch our hearts, so that we may attend to your gift of creation. Help us to be conscious that our common home belongs not only to us, but to all of your creatures and to all future generations, and that it is our responsibility to preserve it. May we help each person secure the food and resources that they need. Be present to those in need in these trying times, especially the poorest, those most at risk of being left behind. Lord, transform our fear and feelings of isolation into hope and fraternity, so that we may experience a true conversion of the heart. Help us to show creative solidarity in addressing the consequences of this global pandemic. Make us courageous to embrace the changes that are needed in search of the common good. Now more than ever, may we feel that we are all interconnected and interdependent. Enable us to listen and respond to the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. May the present sufferings be the birth pangs of a more fraternal and sustainable world. Under the loving gaze of Mary, help of Christians, we make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen.
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 Amen. Thank you, Father Ras. And we can see Fiji, is that behind you? How beautiful.
Yes.
Being Fijian, that's very appropriate to see the waves rolling in for us as we close today. Thank you all for your time, your contribution in every way with prayer and dialogue, reflection and action. And we look forward to gathering again. We'll share this recording, of course, as we always do, to follow up. I never know who to give the final word to because there's so many wonderful people on the call. Cheryl, did you want to say anything or give someone a final word?
I just want to say thank you, everyone, for being in this dialogue again. And we hope to continue with this dialogue as we move forward. And hope to celebrate with you the season of creation this year.
Thank you. God bless everyone, and thank you to our special speakers today for your time and expertise. Greatly appreciated.
God bless and thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thanks, Jackie.
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you.